So thank you for attending today. We are here today to go through our house hunting top tips webinar, and we're doing that in partnership with Nottingham Trent University. And delighted that Anna Marie has been able to come and join us today. My name is Lynn Wilson, and I am a housing hub advisor for Unipol Student Homes. We are a student charity who have been working in the student accommodation sector for almost 50 years now. And I'm joined by my colleague, Tom Taylor, who is a colleague working locally in our Nottingham branch on Shakespeare Street. So I'm going to take you through some of the information to help you at this time of the year, whether you're house hunting for the first time or you just want some refresher information because you're going to be going into your third year possibly, or postgraduate, or thinking about a postgraduate course next year, and to give you some tips along the way. Just get rid of that. So as we're saying, we've been going for, well, 50 years ish. We say since 1973. Somebody said 1974. So I think we're coming up to about our 50th birthday. And what we do offer is a lot of accredited student accommodation and properties in Nottingham. And what we want to say to students is that properties for rental next year are available now. They are on the market for you to choose, but there really is no rush. We don't want any student to feel pressurized or stressed about getting, their housing accommodation sorted right now if they're not ready. If you haven't got your group together, or if you're not sure you're in a position to sort out whether if you maybe need a deposit or your guarantors, if you think you might want to leave that a bit longer, then that's okay as well. But the idea of today is really to get some tips so that when you do start house hunting, you know what to look out for, and you've got that information, you're equipped with that so that you can make a good informed decision with your housing choices for next year. And I'll probably say this many times throughout the session, support is available through Unipol. So we provide a number of properties across the city, but we also offer advice and housing guidance as well. So if you've been to see a house, or you're thinking about living with a particular landlord, or you've got a concern about something in a contract that you've been given to sign, if you're in any doubt at all, you can come and talk to us about it, and we'll give you some advice on that. So yeah, if you take nothing else away today, please know that Unipol is there to help you as a student during your time when you're accommodation searching. If you've got any questions throughout the webinar, please ask the questions through the Q&A box, and we'll answer them as best we can. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Unipol code. This is something that if you go to your student union and talk and ask about accommodation, the advisors there will tell you to look for a Unipol code accredited property. And what that is about is really getting a fair deal from a good landlord. What you will see if you go for a Unipol code accredited property is that green thumbs up symbol there. So if you see that thumbs up symbol either on a landlord advert or an agency in an agency window, or if it's in, on the footnote of an email from a landlord, you will know that they're part of the Unipol code. And the Unipol code is an accreditation scheme. It seeks to raise standards in student housing. Landlords can voluntarily join the code, but what they sign up to is a set of standards which say that they will provide a service that will go beyond what is required by law. So that automatically should give you some peace of mind that the landlord that you're choosing has voluntarily signed up to something which is going to provide you with a service going beyond that legal minimum. Um, Unipol code landlords set out to offer you good customer service, to give you safer physical conditions, and they must adhere to a reasonable set of repair timescales. That's all laid out in the code, depending on how urgent and how serious a matter is. Um, we, as an organisation, inspect a percentage of the landlord's properties on a 3-year cycle, and always following a complaint. So, you've got that assurance there as well with the code property that, you can look at the code, you can see, for example, how long would I expect to wait for a certain repair to be conducted? It's laid out in the code. And what if I make a complaint? Is anybody going to come and have a look at my house? Well, yes, our inspection team would. So the thumbs up symbols take a number of different approaches depending on the type of landlord and the type of agency. So you may see them if a landlord, for example, has got part of their property portfolio for professionals, but also rents to students, they might be part of the supporter code for Unipol, because all of their properties aren't for students, or they might be working towards meeting the standards of Unipol. Many landlords will be part of the Unipol code. If you're living in a purpose-built student accommodation, a more modern block of flats, say in the city centre, for example, um, that very likely is going to be part of the national code. So you can see there that there's good scope for any provider of accommodation, whether it be private landlord, agent, or purpose-built student accommodation, to be part of that code. So if when you go looking for your accommodation, if you do go to see a managing agent, a couple of tips there. Some managing agents will have a property portfolio that they manage. Some will have their own properties within that, but also they will have quite possibly a number of let-only properties, which means that during the letting season, a number of property owners will give them their properties to let. So that letting agent will, to all intents and purposes, provide just like a shop window for that property. So they'll just be letting it. Once you're under contract and living in the property, it might be that you're dealing with the landlord themselves, or it might be that they have a third party property maintenance company. So it's really important that before you sign a contract, you know who it is you're going to be dealing with once you're living there. Um, Sometimes students will say to us, oh, well, the people in the office when we went and signed were really nice, they were really friendly, we got a really good feeling. But actually, once you've signed a contract in some situations, you might not be dealing with those people anymore. So yeah, it's just good to be clear about that. I'll say this a couple of times as well. Very important to read the contract carefully. Make sure you understand what you're agreeing to. And where you don't understand, always ask. You can ask, a family member to read it over. You can read it as a group if you're signing, for the same property. And here at Unipol, we now offer a free contract checking service. So if you've been given a contract by a landlord or a letting agent, you can go to our website and you can actually upload that contract for us to have a look at. We'll read through the detail of that. If there's anything that we think maybe needs further investigation or something doesn't seem quite right, we'll let you know. If there are any questions we think you should be asking the landlord, we'll let you know. We aren't able to give legal advice, but we do see a lot of contracts. We know what student tenancies look like, so we will be able to offer you some guidance and hopefully point you in the right direction so that when you do come to sign your contract, you can feel confident in doing so. So when you start to do your viewings, something that is possible is that you can go to our website and you could find out whether the landlord that you're interested in, whether their property is actually covered by the Unipol code. So we have from our homepage, we have a property checker. So you can put in the address of the property and look up whether that address is code accredited, and it will tell you if it is or if it isn't. And again, if you just know the name of the landlord that you're in discussion with, you can put them into the um, search tool, and it will tell you as well if they're part of the code. So that's just a quick way for you to go via the website and to see whether they are accredited. You can also ask them, and they hopefully they would know whether they were or they weren't, and let you know that. But if you wanted to do that extra check, do use our website. So when it comes to house hunting, there's all kinds of decisions to make, all types of considerations. So we just want to take you through some of those. So, first of all, where do Nottingham Trent students choose to live? Well, for those who are based at the city campus, some of those choose to stay in university accommodation. Many choose the Arboretum area. Some like to live in the city centre or the Lenton Triangle and Radford areas. They're the most popular areas for those students. So I'm just going to give you an example of some of our properties that we have in those areas. As I did say before, we do have a rather large property portfolio ourselves, where you can rent directly from Unipol. So that's just some of the areas. And oh, actually, I'll come on to the photographs in a moment. Um, so we've got the Clifton campus as well. So if you're on Clifton campus, again, you might choose to stay in university accommodation or live in Clifton or West Bridgford. And there's a map of that area as well, by the river there. Nottingham Trent, you can see West Bridgford up there in the up just above the centre. My photos. There will be photos to come, I promise. So property types available. There are all manner of accommodation, from self-contained properties for one person right up to big shared properties, with 18 bedrooms across all of the popular locations with students. So whether you're the kind of person who wants to live by themselves or in a small group, or maybe you don't know very many people, but you'd like to meet lots of people, you could put yourself in a really large house, and have that lively kind of household. There's something for everybody. There's also lots of modern apartment living in Nottingham, and lots of rooms in purpose-built student accommodation, university halls. So here we are. In any code accredited property, you can always expect your bedroom to have a bed. I would say the majority would be maybe, if the room allows for it, if it's not a small bedroom, you would probably have at least a three-quarter bed, like a small double. Um, some will have larger beds, and it would only really be in the small bedrooms, I think, where you would expect a single bed to be. But there's always going to be a bed, a desk with a study chair. There's always going to be a wardrobe, somewhere to store your belongings in set of drawers. Um, yeah, and quite often like a bedside table, something like that. But that's usually what you can expect in a student bedroom. And the code sets that out as well. So if you were to move into a code property and there was no desk in your bedroom, you'd be able to go back to your landlord and say, there is no desk, and you are supposed to provide this. It is part of the code, and that should be easily resolvable. This is an example of a shared living area. Nice modern kitchens and garden areas. This looks like one of ours, which was probably quite recently refurbished. That's nice garden space there. Another shared kitchen area for a group. So yeah, quite common as well to have the dining area and then social living space as well in the same area. Nice modern decorations as well. That's it, just from a different angle. And again, nice modern bathrooms as well. This is an example of our Sand Hills development where many of our first years live, but we do have rooms in that property as well for returning students. So a development like that would have the reception area, um, social space, um, the dining and living space as well. Um, yeah, modern bathrooms and um, nice spacious bedrooms too. So what we would say when it comes to you're going to be overwhelmed with choice when you look on either our website or lots of websites, and you're going to want to arrange some viewings. So what we would say, if you've got a group together or if you're looking by yourself, use the adverts that we've got to create yourself a shortlist. So when most of the viewings that you have will be in person, but you can also for some students, for example, I was just dealing with one a moment ago who's on a year out in America. um, they would do a virtual viewing where perhaps the landlord can do like a video walkthrough, or a friend can attend a viewing as well and live stream that. And some landlords have got some really good 360-degree virtual tours on their websites too. So there are all kinds of ways that you can virtually look at a property without physically going there. But by doing as much work online, you can really narrow down the choice of properties. Because I think it's much easier if you've just got a couple or a few properties that you've really looked at in quite a bit of detail to go and view, rather than taking the approach where you just go out and view loads and loads of different properties. It becomes really difficult to make a final decision. Um, and it can often be the case that if you're viewing lots and lots of properties over, a couple of weeks, by the time you decide what you want to, where you want to live, it might be that the first place you looked was no longer available. So I would recommend doing as much legwork as you can online, looking at the photographs and everything else available, having a couple or a few in-person viewings, and then try to make a decision from there, as well as you can. When you do go to a physical viewing, um, you know, it's difficult because it's going to be lived in and it might look quite different from the photographs that you've seen of the property in an advert. But try to look beyond the current situation. The current tenant's belongings won't be there when you move in. So do try and look at the space, and see if that's going to work for you and your group. If the current tenants are in the property, um, try talking to them about their experience of living in the property. You can ask them how responsive the landlord is. Does everything work properly? Um, are there any problems? If there have been any problems, have they been resolved? This kind of thing. That's going to be the best way to get a review on the property. When you do go for your viewings, you can use the Unipol checklist, and this is available from our house hunting guide. And I would really recommend you can rip this out. There's like a perforated page that you can tear this out. And I think it's really useful to take that to a viewing with you. It's got scope there, for example, for 3 different properties, but it focuses your attention on some of the things that might not be immediately obvious. And I think when you're going out to do a viewing with your friends, and if you're feeling quite excited about the property that you're looking at, you may be are thinking about yourselves living there and thinking what bedroom you might like, and it might not be immediately obvious to think, I wonder how good the plumbing is, or is do the windows close properly or have locks on them, or how does the shower work well, these kinds of things. So by using our checklist, it will just allow you to have a think about some of the things which, if you're living in the property, um, are going to be really important, such as how many plug sockets there might be in your bedroom. If you've got a lot of electrical equipment, you're going to need more than one plug socket, that kind of thing. So please do use that Unipol checklist. We've also got a number of publications, and again, all of these are available from our website, or um, the housing guide is available from our hub. But there's a deposit guide as well. Now, here at Unipol, you don't need to pay a deposit. We don't take any deposits for our properties, so that's a real advantage to many students who find gathering hundreds of pounds at this time of the year very challenging. But if you are going with a different landlord and you do have to pay a deposit, our deposit information guide will tell you, what the deposit's for, how it must be protected, because the landlord does have some obligations in that respect. And then if you keep hold of it, it will give you information on how and when you should get your deposit back at the end of your tenancy. So the other thing to think about as well when you're house hunting, there are a number of money matters um, beyond the rent, which in itself is quite a lot to think about. So there are considerations, for example, such as a TV license. You'll have seen a number of televisions in those photographs before. In a situation where we provide a television in your property, the television license is covered, so you don't need to worry about that. But in many other properties where a television is not included, if you do wish to have a television or stream TV, um, then you would need to get a television license per property. So that's something that you'd have to look at on the TV licensing website. And most households that decide to have a TV would share that cost between the household. Um, Council tax is something that you won't have to worry about. As students, you will be exempt. There'll be a council, you could apply for a council tax exemption, so you don't have to pay council tax in your property. Should you be living with somebody who maybe is a recent graduate and a professional, then there would be a council tax liability. If they were the only professional living in the property, then they would be able to take they would be eligible for a discount of 25% off of the full cost. But by and large, if you're living as a whole student household, there's no council tax to pay. We always say before you sign your contract, make sure you've spent some time figuring out what your income is and what your outgoings are, because your rent is going to be a lot of money. So you'll need to make sure you can afford it. And if it's going to be difficult to afford, do you, for example, have a part-time job or any other kind of financial support coming in that's going to be able to allow you to meet that financial demand that you have. Um, in terms of bills, you might choose a property that has bills included, but you might be sorting out your own bills arrangements. A property that's got a good EPC rating for its energy consumption is going to be perhaps more cost efficient for you. So the bills and the running costs of that property may turn out to be cheaper. Some landlords are going to offer you a summer rent discount. So some students, might be going away all summer and, really don't want to be paying rent July and August. So in that case, you could either choose something which started in September, a September tenancy, if you could find one, or you might choose a tenancy where there's a substantial summer rent discount. Often that's like half rent in um, July and August. So that's something to think about as well. And you can bundle your bills as well. And I think I'll be saying something about that in a moment. Yeah. So the cost of house hunting, there are all kinds of factors there. What we would say to you is you should not be charged any kind of administration fee under the Tenant Fees Act, which came out in 2019. There are a number of permitted payments. That's the terminology used in that act. And if there is a charge which is not on the permitted payment list, then it is not allowed to be charged. So there is guidance online for renters around the Tenant Fees Act. So if you've got a landlord saying there's an administration charge for contract signing or a charge for viewing, anything like that, that is not allowed. So that's something to look out for. I mean, I have to say, I haven't had any or many cases of admin fees, but that's just something to be aware of. Like I said before, here at Unipol, we don't take deposits, but most landlords will collect a deposit at the time a contract is signed. On average, and it is an average, some will be lower and some will be a bit higher. The average deposit is £275 per person. And the other thing that Unipol doesn't ask for is a guarantor. So if you've not heard the term before, guarantor, that is the name of a person who will sign a legally binding document to cover your rent in the event of you defaulting on your rent. So quite often it's a parent, it's a guardian. I think it needs to be somebody who is a homeowner living in the UK. So most of the time, but not all of the time, it's a parent. They'll sign a document to say that they'll pay the rent in the event of you defaulting on it. In that case. But here at Unipol, we don't ask for that. So if you don't have a guarantor, and many people aren't able to get a guarantor, and some parents don't want that additional burden or the worry of signing a guarantor form, then you can come to Unipol because you don't need one. Okay. So the exclusive average rent level in 2024-25 was £109 for a code off-street shared property. So that's your typical student house. And then £125 per week for bills included. But sorry, that was for last year. And then rents rising between 3 and 8% this letting year. So yeah, quite a lot if you're at that 8% rise. Inflation is affecting everything as well. So, food costs going up, travel costs going up, just everyday products going up as well. So, we recommend that you have like a safety net of sort of 3% in your budget when you're trying to work all these costs out to just to accommodate those additional charges. So lots of students will ask, am I better off getting a bills included package, or am I better off sorting out my own bills? And that's very much a personal choice. Some students really like the ease and the hassle-free option of just having bills included. They know how to budget, they know where they are. They don't have to worry so much about turning the heating on and how much that's going to cost because they're just paying, the same rent every month throughout the year. There are some deals to be had out there, and some students, quite like to find their own deals for their energy and their internet. And then when shared out between the whole household, feel that they can get a better for a bit of work and effort on their part, they can actually get something which is going to work out cheaper in the long run. So it really just does depend. I think in situations where students don't know each other so well, where perhaps people are taking, an individual room in a property, maybe the all-inclusive option is better because it just avoids, any confusion or any conflict because you just know where you are with your bills. Yeah, and exclusive rents, yeah, take that 3 and 8% there. So many landlords will use a third party. So where a landlord is offering you a bills included package, they are often offering you that through a third party. And it's that the company will be charging the landlord whatever that is. There will be a set fee for a 2-bedroom property, 3-bedroom, 4, and the more people in the property, usually the cheaper the cost per person, and that is usually how that works. You may well be offered a contract to sign for your rent with the landlord, and you might be offered a separate contract with the third party organisation for your bills. We always suggest that you check that all inclusive means what you think it means, in that some contracts will have a cap on and a fair use policy. So really, this is to protect landlords from um, tenants perhaps overusing energy, so that, I think in most cases where people use a reasonable amount of their utilities to keep their house warm and to have plenty of hot water, um, there are no issues at all. Issues tend to occur where maybe the heating is, on maximum all day long, all night long. Windows are kept open, this kind of thing, and the bills can really skyrocket. So I think in order to protect themselves from those situations, a fair use cap has been applied. But in my experience, most of those fair usage caps do tend to be quite generous to allow for comfortable living, but it is important that you check that in the contract to see what is there. Because if you do have a cap and you do go beyond that, then you may well have to pay the extra, and the extra um, per unit of energy used, or however it's determined, could be quite costly. Um, so before you sign a contract, a couple of things to think about, lots of things to think about. Um, you know, is it do you have a joint contract with joint responsibility, or is it individual responsibility? I would say many contracts are joint responsibility, though they will be called joint and severally liable. So you will have a joint responsibility for the entire rent of that property and everything which happens within that property. So um, if somebody, for example, drops out of university who is signed up, and they leave, um, the responsibility for getting a replacement tenant in is really on everybody, because at the end of the month the landlord is going to expect the full amount of the rent for that house, regardless of how many people live in there. So you sign that jointly, and the rent really is that full amount for everybody, that full occupancy of that property. If you sign a contract where you have individual responsibility, and that would be the case for all Unipol properties, you're really just only responsible for yourself, and the communal areas. So if you are a group, but you've all got an individual contract for your bedroom, and somebody drops out, um, the onus is not on you as an individual to make up any shortfall, and get that replacement tenant in. Um, the individual is responsible for paying the rent until a new tenant comes in, but the other tenants of that house are not affected in that way. Um, in terms of damage to a property or something like that, if you're in a joint property, then yeah, the bill would be for everybody. And if something happened, I think in a property where you had an individual contract, if something happened in a bedroom, it would be the individual's responsibility. Um, if it was, say, malicious damage, or if it happened in the communal area, um, then even if you're on an individual contract, if it happened in the communal area, typically you would all share the cost of that in that communal space. But like I said before, make sure you can afford that contract. Make sure you know about the guarantor situation before going in, and it's really worth remembering that the contract is legally binding, even if you haven't moved in. So if you see something now, and come next March, and you sign for it now, and next March you think, I don't really like those people I've signed with anymore, or I've seen something better, or actually I might not even come to university next year, you still are under a contract. So and you are legally bound by that contract even if you haven't moved in. So, there are ways to get replacement tenants, and quite often that does happen. It, occurrences do happen in people's lives, but once you have signed, you are under contract. So um, we just ask you to take it quite seriously and don't enter into anything lightly, because once you've signed, it can be quite difficult to get out of something. So and really, for a tenancy release, for a landlord to release somebody from a tenancy, there would really, really have to be the most extreme of circumstances. So just like I say, just bear that in mind. So I've said this already about the contract checking, um, but there is some information on our website about how we can do that checking for you. And I would encourage anybody to send us their contract to have a look at. Um, And if you don't want to send us the contract, but you just want to give us a call and ask us some questions, we're happy to do that too. This is a video which we can share with you. We'll share the slides with you, and then you can have a look at this. But this is if you sign a contract with Unipol, you need to watch this video. We don't let anybody sign a contract without looking at this video, because it just explains the legalities of signing a contract and what it means. But it would apply to anybody signing a tenancy with any landlord. So we would encourage you to have a look at that. It's only a minute or so long. So when it comes to you searching for properties, you can use the Unipol website, and we have a really helpful search tool on there. And that search tool allows you to use lots of different you can use lots of different parameters to narrow down the search of the property you want. If you're definite about the area you want to live in, or how far from campus, or what your upper limit of your budget is, you can put all of that information into our search tool, and it will provide you with a list of um, both Unipol properties and other properties with landlords and letting agents across the city who are advertising on the Unipol website. So you can get a good selection of properties using that search tool. Um, if you can't pay a deposit, or if you haven't got a guarantor, there are search functions in there that um, you can select those so that you only see the options that are relevant. If it's absolutely essential that you have an ensuite room, you could do the advanced search and click on show me ensuite only. If you only want to see properties where bills are included, you can do that as well. So yeah, there's all sorts that you can look at there. So if you're a fully formed group, you're always going to be wanting to look for a whole property. And if you are an individual, or maybe you're a couple of friends, but you actually would prefer to live in a bigger house, then you would select the option um, looking for rooms in a shared house. So it's either whole property or rooms in a shared property. So you can choose one of those options. You can also use the student notice board as well. It just says that there, student notice board. Um, and that's like a virtual notice board that only students can use. And at this time of the year, there's one called forming a group looking for accommodation. So if there are a couple of you and you'd like to meet some more people, you can put something on that notice board. Or if you're somebody that would like to join a bigger group, it might be that you go and look on that notice board because somebody might be looking for some extra people for the house that they found. Um, if you are in a situation where you've got a spare room in a house, you can use the notice board as well to advertise any spare accommodation that you've got. So once you've done the search and you've put all of your requirements in, what you will find is you'll get a map with lots of pins. Now, this is an example from Leeds, but Nottingham will look exactly the same. And the pins will show you exactly where the property is, so you'll be able to know whether it's in an area you want it to be or not, the area that you're interested in. And if you click on a particular pin, or if you click on the sidebar on the left, you will get the full details of a particular property. It will tell you what the rent is, what the deposit is. It will always tell you whether what bills are included. If it doesn't mention any bills, that means no bills are included. And it will give you other information, quite often floor plans. It'll tell you how many bathrooms there are, um, all this kind of thing as well in the full advert. It will always give you the contact details as well of the landlord. So there will almost always be a telephone number for the landlord and an email address. Um, and quite often there'll be a button where you can click book a viewing. So that's there as well. So you can get straight in touch with the landlord. So the notice board that I was talking about a minute ago looks a bit like this. You just need your email address to subscribe to a post and add anything on there or reply to a post. But there's all kinds of things on there. So if for example you're looking for something next summer for a couple of months, say you wanted a short term let because your tenancy was starting in September, but actually you were going to be around in August, you might be able to find a short term let on there for a month. So worth bearing in mind. If you don't have anybody to live with yet, if you haven't found your group or you're not sure what you want to do, or you're thinking, actually, I just want to meet some new people and, you know, just find a different group altogether for my living arrangements next year, we are going to be holding a number of flatmate finding events. So we will publish information on that as and when, and we'll always put things on our social media, typically our Instagram, but that will tell you about those events. So um, usually, I mean, we try and make them as low key as possible. Some Unipol staff will be there. We invite people to come along. Um, we do sort of questions and answers about properties, different types of accommodation, and we try to create a sort of an environment where you can meet other like-minded people. Okay, so what we found from some research was that last year, over 1 in 4 students changed or wanted to change the groups with the people that they'd initially signed contracts with. So this goes back to what I was saying before. If you imagine you sign a contract now and then in March, decide actually I don't really like those people. Yeah, from the research we did last year, 1 in 4 people had changed their minds about the group. So, I would really encourage anybody to feel sure and not feel pressurized to sign up with a group. Um, Even if it feels really awkward, or even if you feel like you might hurt somebody's feelings, if you know deep down that it's not the right group for you, then it's much better to voice that and not go along with something and sign up, because um living with people you don't want to live with is going to make for a miserable academic year. So um I think it's always better to trust your own judgment, and if you don't think it's right, there are other options available. So you can choose to go to one of these find a flatmate events, um and that could increase some other options for you. We just wanted to say a little bit about scams. Um, it's not something that we find a lot of, but we have had a few cases in the last year or so. And where there are situations where scams have taken place, um, the effects can be devastating for the students. So we just want to highlight that nobody should be paying any money to conduct a viewing. A landlord should not be taking money for that activity at all. If a landlord is refusing to do a viewing with you or keeps making excuses, I don't know, that they're abroad, or that there's some reason why you can't see the property, even if it looks amazing online, um, d- you know, don't just sign for it without seeing it or feeling confident about it, because anybody who is letting you a property should be able to show it to you, should want you to see it first. Most landlords um, really, really would prefer you to see the property, because no good landlord wants you to move in somewhere that you haven't seen and potentially be disappointed, because that's just going to be a headache for them. So if there's anything making a viewing difficult from the landlord's point of view, that's kind of, that should be treated, with a little bit of, a little bit of skepticism. Do watch out for third-party websites which may be selling you or trying to sell you fictional accommodation. It's always good to cross-check an address, maybe using Google Maps, or look at the website of the provider to see that things tally up. And always do ask for advice. If you're not sure about something, do seek advice. And in fact, one of the people who um, really had a bad experience in this regard was, in fact, a student union officer. So somebody who felt quite embarrassed about what she'd done, because she felt she should have been more aware and should have known better. Um, but yeah, through a series of actions, she ended up in a real tricky situation. So please do ask for advice. And if something looks too good to be true, then maybe there is something that needs to be investigated a bit further. But fortunately, it isn't something which happens very often. Okay, um, so what to say really, just to kind of round up, is, we know you're looking for accommodation around now for next year, so we want you to have as much information as possible. We want you to think carefully about whether it's the right property for you. Is it in the right area? Is it with the right people? Is it the right rent? Is everybody in the group content with the property? The property you choose might not be everybody's first choice, but nobody should be pressurized to sign for something that they don't like. And because, as I said before, once you've signed, it's very unlikely that you'd get released from a tenancy agreement. Yeah, once it's signed, the release very, very unlikely. Um, and you can advertise for a replacement to take over your room, but it's not guaranteed if and when you would find that replacement. Um, yeah, always think carefully about who you want to live with. Um, Consider your priorities as well beforehand. That might avoid conflict um, with people that you're looking with. So, yeah, if you, for example, have a car, and your priority is to maybe have a driveway, or somewhere with ample street parking, um, that's going to be in conflict with somebody who maybe in your group wants to live in the city centre, where parking just might not be an option at all. So try and think what your priorities will be. And budgeting's never been more important, unfortunately, than it is now. So really do think about that, and yeah, and how that's going to work. Um, and if you could rent a Unipol code property, yeah, you've got the backup of Unipol, because if you have an issue with a landlord who's a code landlord, and you've reported something to them and they haven't dealt with it, and you've tried as far as you can to get something resolved, if it's still not resolved, you can come to Unipol, and our complaints investigator can make an intervention, and hopefully work with you to mediate and get that situation resolved. So it's a real safety net being with Unipol, and certainly being with a code accredited landlord. Always try and ask the right questions at viewings, even if it feels a little bit awkward or you're not sure. Um, you know, it's a big investment. It's probably the biggest investment you've ever made, the biggest expenditure, rent. So you're more than entitled to ask all kinds of questions about the property. So don't worry about that. Put anything you agree in writing. So if you're conducting a viewing, and your landlord says, for example, oh, that sofa's, that sofa's had it, it's in a poor condition, but don't worry about that. I'll put a new one in for when you move in. It's going to be, brand new in here, or I'm going to paint this wall, redecorate. Um, Make sure you've got some written correspondence with them about that. So it might be before you sign the contract, you might email them to say, further to our viewing, you agreed X, Y, and Z. Can I just confirm that's the case? And in doing that, um, you've got something in writing from them so that if when you do move in, if that old tatty sofa is still there and the room hasn't been redecorated as agreed, you can say, hang on a minute, this isn't as we agreed. And do get that tenancy check before you sign. Yeah, so we've got all sorts of mailing lists and information on how to find the best properties. So you can have a look at that on our website. And I'd just like to thank you for listening. Um, does anybody have any particular questions? I don't know if anything's come through to you, Tom, while I've been talking.
No, I can't see any questions.
No questions there. Okay. Is there anything that you'd like to say, Anna Marie? Is there anything that I haven't covered which you think would have been helpful?
No, that was really comprehensive, Lynn. Thank you for that. That was very informative. And as you touched on earlier, obviously, as a university, we do offer university accommodation to returning students. So it's definitely an option. And also, we don't take deposits either, and we don't require a guarantor. So there is absolutely that option as well. And in terms of when the booking system will be going live, I would recommend keeping an eye on our website and keeping an eye on any email correspondence. And then just in terms of contacting us, we have an accommodation hub, which is open Monday to Friday from 9:30 till 4:30. So if you'd like to come and see us in person to chat about anything, feel free to do so. And then obviously you can contact us as well via email on accommodation@ntu.ac.uk or call us and the phone number is 0115 848 2894. But other than that, I think that's everything
Oh,
covered. Thank you.
fantastic. Well, thank you very much for watching if you stayed with us till the end. And if you do have any further questions, please do get in touch. Yeah, we really are here to help. So I'll leave it there for now. There's a lot to go through. I can send this presentation out to anybody who's attended. And yeah, the recording's going to be available for anybody who wants to watch after today. So thank you very much.